Thanks everyone for joining us for our program. Ready, Fire, Aim, the new imperative for managing customer experiences. We've got a good audience building, so let's get started. Now, the key word there is experiences. It's not just about content anymore. The way you think about web content management needs to change, and fast. Your customers are more digitally savvy than ever, on more devices than ever. And if you're not delivering meaningful digital experiences across channels in real time, you risk losing them to competitors who are. Hi, I'm your host, Scott Smith, and I'll be joined by two of the leading experts in helping you ensure you'll keep your customers. Gartner analyst Mick McComiskey and Sitecore Vice President of Product Marketing, Mark Floysand. They'll show us how WCM as a category is evolving way beyond delivering content storage for web pages and why it matters to your business. We'll look at why you need to act now, what technology you need, what steps you need to take, and where you can turn for help. And we'll also take a few questions for Mick and Mark, so make sure to enter one for either speaker at any time. So with all that to get to, let's go right to Mick McComiskey. Mick is a vice president for enterprise software research at Gartner, where he is a lead analyst for web content management. Mick, thanks for joining us.
Hi there.
Now, we mentioned at the outset that enterprises need to change the way they think about web content management. What market pressures do you see driving your clients' WCM investments?
Gartner is seeing a dramatic shift in the area around web content management. Different pressures are emerging, and the rationale behind investments in web content management is also evolving. To sum this up, it's best to consider how it used to be done. Organizations wanted to build a website, whereas now they are trying to drive their digital strategies. In addition, whereas before they wanted to publish a web page, now they want to deliver engaging and effective digital experiences every time. And Gartner sees three main forces as to what is causing this, or even what is accelerating this trend. On the one hand, consumers are becoming more powerful. It's not enough to just have a website that says, hey, hello world, so to speak, here are my headquarters and so on. Rather, aspects of consumer experiences, even games or apps, need to be incorporated into those digital experiences. They need to be easier to use, easier to interact with, and above all, they need to be highly relevant and engaging. The second part is from the organizations themselves that are considering these digital experiences. They are under intense competitive pressure to keep up with those consumer demands. It's not enough for them to just keep their website up to date. They need different versions of what up to date actually means. And instead of up to date meaning a timing aspect, what they mean is relevance in terms of what the end target audience wants right now. Finally, in terms of those organizations, it's clear that this level of personalization, this type of endeavor, you can't define it in advance. So being able to experiment will be part of what's required. And indeed, being able to respond to these known market trends, that will be critical. So in a nutshell, workers, from their point of view, what they need is, number one, a greater ability to bring their solution to market in the first place, and a higher level of agility to modify that solution as and when they require.
What changes do you see in terms of your clients' needs based on the advice they're seeking about web content management?
When we regard this huge shift from websites over to digital strategies, the resultant change that Gartner sees out there, the biggest change, has to do with that single answer. How do I actually deliver more engaging digital experiences? And what does that mean? And we believe this boils down to three main areas. Number one, we need to understand how our target audiences and individuals in those target audiences want to interact with the digital presence. So this means that you need to understand the right channels. You need to understand that the website is not enough, but it's part of the overall approach. The mobile devices, social devices, of course, social channels, and of course, understanding how to make full use of the appropriate apps along those channels. Now, if you are sending out, if you're delivering components of an experience to different channels and they're not connected, this means that you don't get the level of continuity you need across those channels. Therefore, the whole idea of cross-channel continuity is absolutely critical to the success of a digital strategy and to make absolutely sure you engage your target audiences. This means as well that content will not only be reused over different channels, across different devices, but also different versions and different aspects of the content will be used and emphasized. And finally, it's absolutely critical important when you regard the more holistic experience that you know that you're going to need additional adjacent technologies to help you with that experience. So in terms of one aspect of your marketing campaign or marketing strategy, you may have emails, you may have different campaigns going on with websites or microsites or landing pages. All these need to be woven into your overall approach to make absolutely sure you're making full use of those different tools, of those different channels to achieve the right level of engagement and ultimately the right behavioral effect.
Mick, to what extent do your clients expect their WCM to extend to be more of an experience optimization system?
If we consider that major shift, as I mentioned, between the idea of a web content management system to driving digital strategies and from going from a web page to a delivered experience, this means that the idea of web content management needs to evolve as well. Instead of being considered as a place to just keep your content for your web channel, it needs to be considered as a mission-critical component to help you identify and deliver what Gartner calls the best next customer experience. Now, you should regard this idea of the best next customer experience as that set of components that you deliver that will encourage the kind of behaviors you're looking for and that will help the target audience in terms of what they are trying to achieve. And this boils down to a few critical areas. Just as with normal communication, you do want the basic idea of understanding and responding. So likewise, web content management, or this ability to help optimize the overall approach, first needs to be highly interoperable with different sources of insight. These will be information sources or context brokers, or along these lines, even tapping into business intelligence to give you that level of understanding of what the current context is, what the target audience or the individual in that target audience wants to achieve. And then at that point, with that higher level of understanding, you can then make decisions about what should next be delivered. Depending on their location, are they using this device instead of that device? Are they a customer or not? Is this the first time they've come to the web page, or do they come here more frequently? Once that decision has been made, and once the experience in and of itself has been successfully parameterized, then you can actually deliver that experience. This delivery is the crucial part in that it's not just a one-way communication. Every such experience needs to be tested for how effective it actually was. And in this regard, the delivery of content and other experiential elements like functionality or design elements or social elements needs to be consistently tested. And that's where true engagement takes place.
Now, mobile is so central to any strategy now. How are your clients responding to the rise in mobile usage?
What Gartner has observed over the past few years is an absolute clarity in the market of how important mobile is. However, In terms of delivering the best next customer experience, we need to go beyond just supporting a smartphone or a tablet. We need to understand that it's all about the focus on the customer. It's all about the focus on the individual and engaging with them when they are mobile. So whereas this includes those devices, it also takes into account new and exciting ideas like digital signage or smart services. So what this means is that out there's this fascinating and powerful opportunity, but it also presents a great challenge and a source of confusion. So for example, what Gartner is still observing is that many of the current web content management systems out there in the market are either based on selections made 5 or 6 years ago or before, or indeed they're based on in-house developed systems that may even be older. There's absolutely no way that such systems can even keep up with the different changes out there. They can keep up, they can be modified, of course, through development, but then the speed and the ability to change at the pace of the market opportunity, that's no longer there. As a result of this, we are seeing that organizations are now placing an even greater emphasis on the mobile web, on these different channels, and indeed on how to incorporate different types of apps into their digital strategy. So to attract a particular prospect, it might be the case that they use their website or different ways of interacting in terms of leads and so on, whereas existing customers, through various ideas with better services and more contextualized information, they may have different apps out there to service those existing customers even better. What this means is that there is now a real urgency for organizations to act. Gartner believes that they even sometimes need to take a ready, fire, aim approach, meaning to accept the importance of mobile, to ensure that their current web content management is placed under high scrutiny, to make sure once again and in turn that they can support the different channels necessary for the level of customer success that they're trying to achieve. This is a strategic imperative, and the time to act absolutely is now.
So Mick, what can organizations do now to fully leverage these trends to further their own goals?
Gartner believes there are 3 absolute strategic imperatives and highly recommended actions that organizations need to do now in order to really exploit the potential that's out there. The first of these is the following. If you are still thinking in terms of websites and web pages, you absolutely need to think differently. In other words, there's a strong trend out there where much of what seemed leading edge and avant-garde is now out of the box. What you now need to do is to consider your digital strategy, even if it's a 0.1 version, if it's only a few notes on some paper. You now need to assess whether your current web content management system and your approach to interacting with different target audiences, if that is doing you justice, if that is sufficient to fuel your digital strategy going forward. The second main recommendation that Gartner has is let the vendors do the work for you. As it happens, web content management is currently a vendor-led market. What that means is that many of these out-of-the-box capabilities supplied in the current wave of web content management offerings, they're not being used by organizations. This can have different reasons. There could be cultural aspects that hold particular endeavors back or it slows down particular initiatives. So the bottom line here is the following. Look to the leaders in this space. Examine what they have out of the box. Regard these leaders as a benchmark, and instead of the typical approach to requirements, dividing them up into need to have or should have or nice to have, look first at your objectives, at your goals, how you define success to be, and how the set of those capabilities can support the successful execution on those goals. Thirdly, with all the details, with all the weeds, and with all the confusion in this space, it is critically important you keep the big picture in mind. What this means is taking into account the idea that to achieve your digital strategy, you will absolutely need multiple technologies. You will absolutely need perhaps new resources or new different personnel in your team, and in many cases, different processes as well. With this bigger picture in mind, it'll help work or act as a compass. This will give you the direction while you pay closer attention to the tactical day-to-day urgencies. Remember, these bigger solutions, the approach to achieving them is no longer the big bang that it used to be. That's too risky. And you don't actually know all the information, how things are going to emerge over the next 2 years to define what that big bang should actually look like. So the bottom line here is the following. You need to proceed with your solution in a very incremental, experimental, and iterative way. And by keeping the strategic context in focus, it'll keep you in balance with the tactical urgencies that you also need to prioritize.
Mick, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Gartner Research Vice President Mick McComiskey will join us again in a little while to field some questions, so continue to get them in for Mick and our next speaker. Mark Floysand is the Vice President of Product Marketing for Sitecore. Mark, it's a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you.
Now, Sitecore has most certainly grown in this space over the last decade. What's at the core of this growth?
Well, it's at the heart of Sitecore's original structure. We really built ourselves up to enable people to manage content separately from how it was presented out across different channels. And so, as we, for example, have seen people looking to manage content across websites initially, and then broaden their reach across other digital channels as they've emerged, Sitecore has been very well positioned to enable our customers to do that. If you think of it, whether those are channels like email or social channels or adopting mobile devices and so on, Sitecore has been able to very easily make that content available across these different things so that as new channels emerge, many of which we don't even know yet, our Sitecore customers are very well placed to take advantage of it. Look at something like wearables, for example. A lot of hype and a lot of interest right now in terms of how people might interact with brands using devices that they're physically attached to. Again, because of that separation of managing content versus the presentation that it's presented out on, means that our customers can easily start thinking about new ways of engaging across these new and emerging places beyond the web, but still using their same core content management capabilities. The other thing I should add to that is that we've also had a fundamental belief in the fact that all of these different interactions that consumers have with a brand should be connected. So they exist across different channels, they exist in different places, and it's really important that the knowledge that customers learn about how people are interacting across all those different channels is connected together to help provide a more complete picture of each of every one of those consumers. That in turn, again, improves how those digital experiences can be made more relevant across all these different channels.
Now, you mentioned wearables, and certainly technology is now more on the move than ever. How does Sitecore tackle the question of mobile?
Yeah, mobile is a multifaceted animal, and if we think back several years, Sitecore enabled customers to easily make their websites more responsive. In other words, changing format and shape depending on the screen size that somebody may be using. So that has been built into the Sitecore platform for several years now, this notion of responsive design. In other words, I've built a website, how does it easily kind of shape to look good and to be optimized on all those different screen sizes? However, there are also capabilities called adaptive design where you may want to deliver a very specific experience to a certain kind of device. And so again, Sitecore has been at the forefront of enabling people to identify what kind of device somebody is using and specifically deliver a customized experience for that device. For example, if I'm interested in ensuring that iPad users of a certain screen size get a very specific offer, Sitecore detects those users and can effectively personalize accordingly. That also spans through to things like application design or app design. We've seen as more consumption of content and more interaction with brands takes place through apps themselves, that people want those apps when they design them to be able to call home, to be refreshed with content that comes from that same single source of content management. And so our app development environment, which is based on our Xamarin Platform, enables people who are developing apps to easily have those across multiple mobile platforms. If they develop an app on our framework, they're able to very quickly make that app available against multiple mobile operating systems. So instead of having to develop an app for Apple iOS and then redevelop an app for Android and redevelop an app for Windows Mobile, Xamarin enables that code to be easily redeployed across those platforms, making it much quicker for application developers to build an app and get it out into the market. And so if we think of how people are engaging with mobile devices, we're seeing a lot of innovation now with folks who are rethinking the experience for example, with an Apple Watch or a Samsung wearable, and how those connect to the mobile devices, how they interact with those apps, and how, therefore, you can extend the experience really to take advantage of call it the context, if you like, the actual proximity of where people are and their immediacy to the device at hand.
Mark, how do you help your customers get organized to deliver on this experience promise?
It's a good question. One of the things that I think is at the tenet of successful experience delivery is looking at any project in a holistic fashion. This isn't just about fancy technology. Like all things, there's the typical, people, processes, and technology. And we believe from a Sitecore point of view that we have a really strong technology platform upon which people can build these. But we also need to make sure that the right processes and skills are there in order for people to take advantage of it. And so, for example, on the people side of things, we have a high volume of training programs that both our developers and our marketing users go through to develop on the Sitecore platform to build out those experiences. And of course, to actually use Sitecore to drive campaigns, to create and manage content, and deliver these highly relevant experiences as well. And then on the process side of things, this is where we really see an incredible need for organizations to rethink how they take advantage of this technology and these skills to become more digitally mature. And to that end, we have an organization we call Sitecore Business Optimization Services, or SBOS for short. And think of the SBOS team as having created a process or a methodology for using Sitecore, how to actually set up campaigns, how to set up an environment so that more relevant information is made available to different segments, different groups, different personas, and is done in a way that is kind of in bite-sized chunks so that organizations can embrace what we have to offer, start small, and build on it. So that over time, as they become increasingly sophisticated in their digital marketing capabilities, they're able to weave in more and more of use more and more of the functionality that Sitecore brings to bear.
You mentioned a wide range of functions, and Sitecore has a lot more than just WCM, email, marketing automation, and so on. And yet many of your clients, if not all of them, already have technology in place for some of those tasks. So how does Sitecore fit in then?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because on the one hand, we talk about Sitecore having a completely integrated offering that enables people to do all of the tasks that you just mentioned within Sitecore. But the reality of it is that many of our clients, particularly our larger ones, have already made investments in other technology. And so in order to ensure that they get the most out of those investments, we integrate very closely with many of the leading marketing automation platforms, and we provide a development environment that's very familiar to .NET developers to enable them to do integrations with these different systems as well. So in practice, what we find is that many of our customers may well have an existing email automation tool that they have a contractual obligation to use, and the best service that we can offer is to fit in with that environment and then take advantage of that information, ingest it into Sitecore, and use it to provide more relevant emails back through that system. So we really take a view of all of these disparate marketing systems in and of themselves may provide something, but under the hood, each of them also has a certain amount of customer information which is vital to get back into one place. And so our clients, the way we approach them is to say, all of those different business systems that you have, you should see as a source of additional customer information that we should integrate to get back into Sitecore. Sitecore joins the dots, connects those different bits of information together to provide these unique profiles of each and every customer. And it's those profiles that we use to personalize content across all these different channels in real time. So the more systems we can connect to Sitecore and the more data we can ingest into Sitecore, the richer those profiles become and the more relevant the experiences that are delivered to each and every one of those individuals.
Mark, thank you.
Thank you.
And let's bring Gartner analyst Mick McComiskey back into our conversation as we've got some questions for both of you. And Mick, I'll start with you. With all the WCM offerings out there, how do we differentiate between them?
One of the points to emphasize in this new area of potential, that if the previous ways of selecting web content management, if they amount now to more foundational capabilities, well, how is somebody to decide what the main differentiators are now if I'm choosing a new web content management offering? And the question is not easy, yeah? And really what counts here is the following, is that if you regard your overall digital strategy, you'll be considering what kind of goals you're trying to achieve. And indeed, you can break down this broader digital strategy into finite chunks. So for example, you may be starting off in the area of, let's say, digital marketing effectiveness. Now, we all know that doing the wrong thing more efficiently won't get you anywhere. So the idea of digital marketing effectiveness is going from a paradigm, the old paradigm of just making things more efficient, to making things more effective to increase the impact. And in this regard, it's important to be looking for offerings that have really sound and comprehensive engagement analytics, or that have a high ability to interoperate with adjacent technologies that can augment what they provide natively. Another area here is, of course, is that marketers cannot be waiting for the longer software development life cycles before their ideas get tested. Remember, this is a new model of being incremental and iterative and above all experimental. You can't wait 6 months to run a particular experiment, find out it fails and wait out another 6 months before trying again. So usability is of critical importance here. And distinct from ease of use, where ease of use is like, how long does it take me to get up and running? It's a measure of time almost. Usability refers to the number of capabilities in the hands of non-IT professionals, and these capabilities should be easy to use. What that means is marketers now have the agility they need to try, to test, to prove it works. If it doesn't work, to try again. Another area of pronounced differentiation really comes to the area of contextualizing delivered experiences. Now, personalization is an absolute key aspect here. If you do detect the identity, if you are picking up as an existing customer, then of course you can be tailoring the delivered experience in accordance with that person's specific knowledge. However, contextualization goes beyond that. And remember, engagement starts from the very first touch point. So when they first interact with your digital presence, You can pick up what kind of device they're using, where they are, if it's an IP you recognize, and all these different things. So when it comes to differentiating the vendors out there, look for those who allow you to achieve this level of engagement, even at the beginning, even at this first touch. Another emerging area where I believe differentiation is also quite pronounced in the web content management offerings out there. It's in the area of digital commerce. And what Gartner is observing is that a vast majority of organizations are realizing that they need commerce or transactional components in their overall solution. What this means is that interoperability between the web content management offering and such adjacent technologies will be critical. Remember, from the customer perspective, and this is what it's all about, it's taking into account the intent of the customer, be it in media or classic retail or even B2B. If they go from a more marketing interaction over to a more transactional or commercial interaction or merchandising-based functionality, then that continuity needs to be seamless and across channels. So indeed, look out for not just the usability I mentioned earlier on, but also on the level of interoperability to allow this level of continuity across different channels.
Unfortunately, we only have time for one more question, so let's give the last word to Mark. This question asks, we want to take advantage of e-commerce, so how can Sitecore help us there?
Yeah, that's a great question. The key thing to think about is that every individual that's trying to do business with your organization is indeed that. They're an individual. They are interacting with you across a number of different systems, but they are one person. And so the more connected those systems are, and the more consistent the experience for that individual, the more likely they're going to be happy. And so we, from a Sitecore point of view, really see this as a continuum. It's very important, of course, to have a very rich web experience and multi-channel communication experience. But equally, that has to be consistent with the campaigns that you're embarking on to, for example, drive more sales to your online store. And the personalization of information and offers in those campaigns should harness and take advantage of the information that Sitecore has gathered and stored. And equally, from a commerce point of view, that same degree of personalization and relevance should be brought to bear in making that offer online to that individual shopper. So think of this as an example. If I have been, for example, browsing a site and researching products on your store that are, let's say, at the premium end of the price list. So my behavior is indicated that as an individual, I'm a relatively affluent shopper and I'm interested in your premium products. If the campaigns and the emails that you send to me are to promote those premium products, that just makes sense. And if I then come through to your store and I'm transacting online, the kind of ancillary offers that you may want to present to me in terms of upsells and cross-sells should again support that same behavioral nuance that you picked up earlier. There's no point promoting something in the shopping cart to me that's, for example, a discount, hoping that might entice me to convert. What might be more useful is reminding me of how exclusive this particular premium product is and how I'd be one of the first to buy it if indeed I close out that shopping cart today. So the point is that we should regard individuals as moving through a journey across these different things, and that commerce is seamlessly woven into the experience. And the knowledge that we have about any particular individual should be used not just in terms of the content and the experience that they have online, but in the campaigns they interact with and the actual shopping process that they go through as well. They should be joined up and be one.
Mark, thank you very much. And we have to end it there. And while we had more questions than we had time to get to, fear not. If you did not hear your question addressed, someone will follow up with you in the near future. For now, a quick program note. Gartner is an impartial, independent analyst of the information technology industry. All content provided by other enterprises is expressly the views of those enterprises and the speakers. The information should not be construed as a Gartner endorsement of said enterprises' products or services. And with that, we'd like to endorse the insights of Gartner Research Vice President Mick McComiskey and Sitecore Vice President of Product Marketing, Mark Floysand. Thank you both again for the great advice. And thank you all for your time and interest. To find out more on how to give your customers a better experience, go to www.sitecore.com. Thank you.